I want to point out just a couple of resources that you may or may not be aware of that I think are really great for educating and promoting digital citizenship and so-called netiquette, or what is our etiquette when we're online. So this is a graphic from Common Sense Media. If you're not already aware of it, it's a national nonprofit organization. So they're really dedicated to helping educators empower young people to think critically, behave safely, and participate responsibly in our ever-changing digital media world. So they have a digital citizenship curriculum, and as you'll see, it's broken down by grade level and then the different units that are covered. So everything from internet safety, relationships and communication, cyberbullying and digital drama, our digital footprint and reputation, creative credit and copyright, issues that are all very important just for our the way that we're doing education now for students to be aware of these different things. And it also obviously gets into preventing and recognizing cyberbullying. As a parent, I love the Common Sense Media website as well for if my kids are asking about a new movie or a new game, I can go on and see, for what age is this most appropriate. Another resource that I'd like to highlight is NetSmarts. So this is the educational website sponsored by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I think we might have someone from NCMEC in this webinar, which is wonderful. Great site, information for law enforcement, students, families, and educators about online safety. They have a 1-hour free online training for educators. They also have a student project kit for students in grades 6 to 12 to help them teach other students about topics like cyber safety, and then videos to use with students. So this is just a screenshot of one of the sample videos that they have. This is on the NetSmart Teens website, so www.nsteens.org, and this one is about why do people cyberbully. So they may have a teen that's on there talking about it. They may share some statistics, some stories in a way that is relatable for teens. And then as you'll see on the right, there's some stuff to know about never responding. These are some of the tips that we want to make sure that our youth know about, that one of the worst things they can do, although the most tempting often, is to respond to a harassing or rude comment online. The importance of saving, printing, taking a screenshot of the evidence, respecting others, not sharing the password, things like that, thinking before posting, and tips like that. Okay, we did receive some questions prior to the webinar, so thank you for those who sent in questions. Many of them I am addressing with the areas that I'm already going through, but one that came up was how do we, how are schools finding the time to implement meaningful programs to prevent cyberbullying? And how can we present this information to kids in a creative, engaging, and interesting way? So I'm going to give you some strategies and some tips, but we thought it would be really interesting if you would be willing to use that chat feature and just share some of the things that you may be doing related to how or where does your school fit in meaningful instruction or activities or programming to prevent cyberbullying. So those are things that we'll touch on at the end as we go into the Q&A. We can highlight some of the responses that people gave. It's always really nice to hear. If we were all in person, I would go around and ask some people to share or maybe get in pairs and talk about that. But we do have that chat feature that you can use to share some of your ideas as well. And hopefully you're also asking questions as we go along as well with the chat feature so that we can address those at the end as well. But let me go through some of the activities or suggestions for building digital character. Many of these come from Samir Hinduja and Justin Patchen. They are the co-founders of the Cyberbullying Research Center, which is another excellent resource for information, fact sheets for parents, school personnel, students, you name it. They have a lot of resources. But some of the things they suggest is really including those students in developing guidelines. As I've mentioned, discussing digital citizenship. A specific thing you can do is have students Google themselves. So what comes up? They may be surprised at some of the things that are out there that they may not even know. And if they can find it easily on Google, then they better bet that a future employer or anybody else could find that out as well. Discussing implications of phone usage. I think a lot of kids don't know that taking and sending explicit photos can be considered child pornography. So if you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old that's getting a picture of your girlfriend that she might have sent, she took her top off, she sent it to you, don't I look cute, you send it on, you could be charged with child pornography and get yourself on a sexual offender list. That's something that doesn't, that stays with you. And kids with their brains that aren't fully developed till they're 24, 25 just may not have that information or know that, but it's important for us to educate them about that. Making time and space to discuss experiences with social media use and cyberbullying, and certainly emphasizing caution around online strangers. Just anecdotally, it seems like a lot of youth are attuned to that, kind of the online predators and the creepy people that they don't know. What they seem less attuned to is their own behavior online and some of the things that happen that are not so good between teens. Again, very relevant to school, discussing crediting online sources and the legal implications of plagiarism. I teach graduate students, and I find that with getting so much more information off the internet, this is something I still need to continually address because copying and pasting is so easy and not really kind of making that jump from when we know that we have to credit a book or an encyclopedia, but not really realizing that if something is so publicly accessible, that is still somebody's work. Schools are challenging students to unplug from technology. I went to a recent presentation at my own kids' school that was saying that they had a unplug from technology, and it was really interesting hearing. They said some kids were having phantom vibrations from their phone, even though they didn't have their phone on them. Someone else said that it seemed like it took 3 days to sort of detox from getting away from that technology and being able to have good conversations and things like that. So just giving it a try. Having a digital citizenship fair where you're really embracing technology, allowing students to show their creativity. That's where the kids that want to do experiments on how Minecraft and how social media use is really good for the brain can go ahead and do that and hopefully have a balanced view on some of the pros and cons. As a psychologist, I love having specific vignettes and scenarios about things that have actually happened or could happen and talking to kids. How would you respond to that? Let's role play. What would that look like? And then having students do public service announcements is another fun way that can be done to preventively get at cyberbullying and building students' digital character. Okay, so let's move into the reporting requirement for Dignity for All Students Act for when you become aware, when a school staff member becomes aware of an incident, what is it that they need to do? I'm going to go over each of these steps in more detail, so I just want to basically show you the flow chart of this. First is becoming aware of the incident and notifying the designee. Then there's an investigation that's, calm, problem-solving approach where all parties are talked to privately. If the investigation verifies an incident, there needs to be prompt action. And that action is really supposed to end the harassment, prevent recurrence, and ensure safety, while also aiming to eliminate the hostile environment and create a positive climate. So not all about punishment, about what are we doing to create a positive climate. And clearly it's important to notify law enforcement if the act is considered criminal conduct, which we got some questions about as well. So I will address that to the best of my ability, realizing that I'm not a lawyer. So the first step, becoming aware of an incident and notifying the designee. Obviously in order for our school staff members to become aware, they need some proactive education, both students and staff, about how to report, how to recognize, and how to report harassment, bullying, or discrimination. So the staff member name, the title of the staff member to receive those oral and written reports should be published in policy. Every staff member, student should know that. Also great to include on the website, post in school hallways, and when you're going over the in-class expectations. So the oral report of the incident needs to take place within one school day after the incident, and a written report following up no later than 2 school days after the oral report. And again, can't emphasize enough the importance of saving the evidence of what it is that happened. So these are some suggestions of information to include in an initial report. It's important to note that New York State does not have a mandated form. These are just, some information that could be helpful in that. Certainly the date, the name of the student, victim, or target, the name or names of perpetrators, witnesses and bystanders, a brief description of the incident, and the name of the reporter. This should also be able to be anonymous. Many times teens won't report if they have to say who they are, so there should be some mechanism where this can be reported. So leading or supervising the investigation. Typically it seems that administrators are doing this. And I'd like to borrow from a threat assessment approach, which is, a validated approach that's being used for threats of violence and other things like that, where it's really recommended that a team approach be used. Certainly the administrator or the designee should consult the school resource officer if there is one, a mental health professional, and others to help them advise and respond. I mean, these are pretty tricky situations oftentimes, and more heads are better than one. Interviewing all involved and doing that separately. And remember, the focus of the investigation is really to find out what's happening and what can we do about this. We want to make this situation better. So it's a calm, problem-solving, investigative approach to find out what exactly was said and done. What was the context? What was the motive? Was it anger? Was it a misguided joke? Was there jealousy? Was there any threat of harm to safety? Finding out more about the relationship and past history. Was this a first-time occurrence, or is this something that's more ongoing? And then what's the impact? Is someone very affected by this? Is it impacting their school functioning? Is it something that they're laughing about? All of those things come into play when deciding how to intervene. Step number 3 is for any incident that is founded to take prompt action. And again, I just want to emphasize that yes, this involves discipline and consequences, certainly, but the purpose of consequences really should be to change behavior. And they're going to be most effective when they directly address the problem and the context. So really considering a number of variables and having a continuum of consequences work best. So thinking about things like the child's age, the offense and circumstances around it, prior history, what's been effective in the past, input from others, and disability status is also important. If someone with a student with a disability has perpetrated, then it's really more of a CSE matter to see whether the behavior is directly related to the disability. And if they were the victim, then certainly they're a protected class. And the Office of Civil Rights has come out pretty strongly and said, what we're calling bullying in schools is actually potentially a form of discrimination and a civil rights violation. So very important considerations. Again, I want to note that these are suggestions. This isn't a mandated template of things that you have to consider when looking at it. So what do I mean by this continuum of consequences? This can include a verbal warning. Ulvaeus, the father of bullying, talked about, or still talks about, the stern talk or the serious talk with the perpetrator. For some kids, that's really going to make quite a difference. I'll share my own son, who's in 5th grade. On their iPads that they have for school, one of his friends had created some sort of feature that I don't even understand, that they could talk and chat and communicate with each other. And they were all called down to the assistant principal, and we got a written note home about that they were, using this inappropriately. And I just loved the way the assistant principal handled it, because he complimented. I mean, they're good kids. He said, "You're good kids. You're really smart that you could figure this out, but remember this policy, or let me take out this policy. That's not an appropriate use of school technology and computers." And, we got a written note home, and he said he was really nice. He felt warned he's not going to do it again, but, that was more of a verbal warning and written notification to parent. Written warning, kind of taking it a notch up. Detention, certainly an option, or in-school suspension. Restitution and reparation. It's beyond the scope of this webinar to talk in depth about restorative practices. But this is gaining more and more momentum as a way of really trying to repair the harm that's been done. Instead of moving from punishment, it's about how can we have consequences that are going to make a difference, that are going to make people feel like they've repaired some of the damage, that they are moving towards something positive. So this could be anything from a written apology, to a plan for someone to do some sort of good deed or service to sort of make amends for what they've done. Certainly suspension of privileges. These are best when they're related to the offense, so whether that's not having computer time, being banned or suspended from athletics, the bus, extracurricular activities. And obviously, school suspension is always an option. I know that schools often deal with parents that want that as the punishment. Just again, need to note that out-of-school suspension has not been shown to be real effective. It tends to lead to more suspension, more alienation from school and things like that, whereas maybe in-school suspension and other options may be better. And just really importantly, that when we're taking action, we're trying to plan for change too. So looking at these incidents on a case-by-case basis, and how can we plan for change? Will this involve counseling, conflict resolution, if indeed it's conflict, a behavioral intervention or a contract, a daily report card with specific behaviors, remembering to provide support to that target and family, so not just focusing on the person who did the harm, but how safe does that child feel? How can you show the family that you care about this, that you're working for change? And then, taking a step back, we're really taking actions to improve school climate, making sure that all the school staff are leading by their example in how they act, what they say, how they treat others, making sure the school is respecting all kinds of diversity in the talent, skills, and abilities of the students, really building those relationships and having time for checking in. Does every kid have a go-to adult in that school? And then really using our data to make change. Are we finding out that it's happening in certain areas where we need more supervision or we need to make some adjustments? So when to call law enforcement? We'd love to be able to give you real specific guidance about this, but it's difficult. And probably the best advice that we can give is to consult with your school's legal counsel about specific times to call law enforcement. But we will also give you some information about when it's most appropriate to call law enforcement. Certainly if there's threats of physical violence, and when it's suspected that a crime has been committed, whether that's a hate or bias crime, child pornography or sending sexually explicit messages or photos, if there's stalking that's happening, or taking a photo or video of someone in a place where he or she would expect privacy. We have to remember, it really depends. Your school resource officer, if you have one, is probably very involved in cyberbullying, hopefully prevention, education, and response. If you need to call out to the police, I think it's better to err on the side of caution in doing that, but realizing that law enforcement does have a pretty specific role oftentimes to try to get evidence to make a conviction for a crime, which is something that we may or may not. That's a lot of incidents that you deal with are not going to rise to that level. So finally, I just want to briefly review the reporting requirement, and this refers to the annual reporting through New York State Ed. So this is concerning school safety and the educational climate. So as you may be aware, certainly if you're the one that submits this for your district, you're very aware that on a yearly basis, from July 1st to June 30th, there's about a 1-month window. This year it's between June 27th and July 29th, where you need to report incidents concerning school safety and the educational climate. So this includes both the VADER, the Violent and Disruptive Incident Reporting Form, and also the DASA, or Dignity for All Students form. So really important to note that on the VADER, Item 10 is intimidation, harassment, and bullying with no physical contact. And this is where you will rate or you will record these incidents that happened and the resulting consequences, whether that's counseling, a referral, a suspension, a change in placement. There's also item 2 on the VADER form, which is highlighted here, and that's for other information regarding intimidation, harassment, menacing, or bullying that wasn't reported in Category 10. So this could be alleged incidents that were brought to the attention of the staff, but that didn't meet one of those consequences that is outlined in this report. The second form relevant to our discussion of cyberbullying is the Dignity for All Students Act form and the material incidents of discrimination and or harassment. So this is the form, but let me walk you through the definition of the material incident. So this can be a single incident or a series of related incidents where a student is subjected to discrimination and or harassment by the student and or employee that creates a hostile environment. This could be with or without physical contact and or by verbal threats, intimidation, or abuse. And it's severe or pervasive enough to substantially interfere with the education, well-being, or fear for physical safety. And that can refer to educational performance opportunities or benefits that it is affecting, or mental, emotional, and or physical well-being. So just to be clear, incidents can and should be reported both on the VADER form and, if it meets these criteria, also on the DASA form as a definition of a material incident. I don't think any secret that schools are vastly, most likely underreporting what's happening. We know the statistics should be much higher than they are, but if you look at the reports, there's many, many schools that are reporting that these incidents aren't happening at all. I know one district locally that meets monthly, their Dignity Act coordinators and their assistant superintendent, and goes through all the in-house incidents that have come to their attention, because most schools have a good internal reporting system and then also decides at that point which ones are going to be reported on this annual basis. So that brings me to the end of the formal presentation. I just want to highlight some of the references that I used in preparing this presentation, and also a huge thank you to members of my team here at the Alberti Center for Bullying Abuse Prevention who helped with this, as well as many people in BOCES and area schools and others that really helped me to put together some of this information. I also, as you know, on the line or on the webinar, we have Jim Dillon from the New York State Center for School Safety. We have Linda Seaman from the New York State Education Department, and also myself from University of Buffalo. And